Hello everybody, this is Eddie, and today we're going to talk about how you can use some of the facts here to get a passing answer for question 5 of the July 2018 California bar exam. And we're also going to throw in there some cheat sheets, some templates, so you can just access those through a link there in the description. So what do we have here? Seems like we have the Commerce Clause. So for the major points here, of course you could have used many issues, but for the main ones, you have the Commerce Clause, you have the Dormant Commerce Clause, and you also have equal protection. And of course, don't forget about privileges and immunities there. So first I want to say that, again, the facts are very important, and the way you use them is not going to be as important here as, for example, if you were like in a traditional straightforward question like contracts. There you have offer, and of course you have some elements there, just throw them in. Okay, but here, okay, where you could use the facts kind of is going to vary in your structure, and that always happens when you come across something like Commerce Clause. Okay, so here are some major facts that he could have used, and I hope you guys use them. Okay, so of course you have bankruptcy, and their railroad was about to be liquidated, so that triggers a potential market participant doctrine discussion. And also, railroad was the largest rail carrier, and it carried 70% of the rail freight. And it also had the lowest rates there, so maybe you could have had a discussion there on alternatives that were less discriminatory. And of course, the act by the state, it said that the factories in the state shall have first choice. So I'm thinking, is that like more of a regulation? And then that would be an argument against the market participant doctrine. And Peter and corporation are citizens of state Y, which borders state X. So you have to discuss the extent on the burden on interstate commerce. So let's go to those cheat sheets, and let's look at the Commerce Clause. And of course, we want to focus on the Dormant Commerce Clause. And there, the elements there seem to be kind of loosey-goosey. So I'm going to give you just 3 arguments that he can make, or that he should have made. And if you have not taken this exam, by all means, look at these cheat sheets and then answer this question. So, consider the state's non-economic interest. Number 2, are there any less discriminatory alternatives? And number 3, that defends the market participant doctrine. So let's start with the Dormant Commerce Clause, as we said earlier. And the first thing we want to know is if the regulation discriminates. Now, if it discriminates, it might not be very clear, but it's entirely possible. And the way you determine that is if the law favors the state or any factories or any people within that state. Now, there was a Commerce Clause and a Dormant Commerce Clause discussion back in February 2005. And in that case, the discrimination was not explicit, where in the fact pattern in this case, it is explicit. So as a side note, some of you guys might have said, hey, look, we could use strict scrutiny here. That is fine. You will probably get extra points for that, because there are cases where the state discriminates on its face. But for the most part, I think most people said, hey, look, let's look at the non-economic interest of the state. So let's do that now. So of course you want to apply a balancing test there. You want to consider the police powers of the state, health, safety, and welfare. And here the facts weren't very clear on any of those factors that the state could have used. So you could have implied, because maybe, hey, the economy is taking a serious downturn there because you have a huge company going into bankruptcy. So just discuss the facts, and then you go on to the less discriminatory alternatives. And I think for me, that kind of, just as an element, that kind of stood out. And again, the facts were kind of slim, but even if they are slim, just grab them and run with them. And you could have discussed that it was the largest railroad, so now we're talking about routes. And also you have the price, so that could have been a factor. Let's look at an example. Maybe you could have said, hey, look, maybe the state could have imposed alternatives. Maybe they could have said, hey, look, we have a problem with space here. Why don't we just have some quotas? And that way there is some certainty as far as the other space that is available. And of course, the facts here, I mean, just run with them. Like I said, that's what you had to do here. Now, let's talk about that popular defense, the market participant doctrine. And there, the state must act solely as a market participant and not as a regulator. And in some past cases, you have that downstream restrictions from South Central Timber Development back in law school. Some of you guys remember that. But there, the court invalidated the defense because they said that the benefits go beyond the border. So that's what they mean by the downstream restrictions. But here it seems like the regulations did not create a benefit outside of the state X. Of course, you could have said that Peter and the corporation could have sold their products to other states outside of state X. So just some facts you could have played with. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying, hey, you should have used these facts or you should have used this particular element to discuss. But all I am saying, discuss the facts. That's key. Now let's move on to equal protection. So there you could have used rational basis. So of course, you want to talk about classifications, and there you could said, hey, look, they're not a suspect class, either Peter or the corporation. So a rational basis discussion would have been fine. And then move on and get those points from the privileges and immunity. That wasn't too difficult. And you already know that corporations are not entitled to the benefits under that particular amendment. Now, another issue that you could have discussed, and I'm not saying that this would benefit you or that it could harm you because of the restraint on time as far as the grading scale is concerned, but you could have mentioned due process, go in and go out. And that's not major points there. So I wish everyone all the best. I hope you passed. Until soon.